All right, welcome back with Carving with Eric. It's been a while since I did a video, and I apologize for that. I think the last video I did was one with the face stick where you did 16 steps. Today I thought we'd just do something simple. And so this is one of my beginner classes that I use to teach beginner carvers. And we want to carve something that looks like this. Now, this is not a real eagle feather. This is a turkey feather that's been painted to look like that, with fuzzed up to look like all the little fuzzies on the bottom. But what you see on Native American headdresses are these eagle feathers, quasi-eagle feathers, quote unquote. And then they have a little bit of felt wrapped around the bottom of it and tied off. And then sometimes they'll put fuzzies on here, and sometimes those are added a little bit later. But we're going to start with a feather, and we're going to make ours look kind of like this. In other words, at the end of it, ours is going to look somewhat like that. So there's a simple feather. It's going to be decorated at the bottom with what we want to look like felt and then some string around it. I have a friend that does a lot of bird carving, and he's done a lot of feathers in his life, and these are a couple of feathers as he's done. That can be done from that, or from this blank that we have here. We can do these as well. I'm not going to try to do these bird carvings because these things are, to me, as my friend Steve said, they're futzy. In other words, it takes me a long time to sit here and put all these little details. And while we'll put some of them on, we'll not put them all on. And I think this is, I don't even know what kind of feathers these are. And I know I could peel them off the back. I think this one has it on the back. It says a mallard feather by my friend Doug Rose. A great bird carver. I love his stuff. We joke back and forth about he carves on the dark side the birds because to me, bird carvers go in and they take a block of wood and they carve, and in just what seems to be no time at all, they have this beautiful rendition of a bird, and I can't imagine having the patience to do that. So my friend Steve says futzy because I don't want to futz around with that particular thing for that long. Here's another one. Let me see if I can. I don't know how it's put on the back. Oh, same way. This one is a blue jay feather. Can you read that? It's a blue jay feather. So again, these are examples of things that are good beginner projects for those of you that teach beginner classes, or for those of you that want to take beginner classes. These are great for that. We're going to put that off to the side, and I talk about making a Native American feather. Here's another one that I saw in a magazine somewhere, or a picture somewhere. A feather with an indentation where they've cut out some kind of depiction of some animal or human in the middle of the feather. And I've seen them painted this way, where the real feather's painted this way. But I like this idea of painting a Native American face. It's a little more in depth than what we want to get into today. But this may be something that we do sometime down the road. But anyway, here's what we're going to start with. And we're going to just jump right into it. This one shouldn't take us that long, because basically what I'm going to do is let me grab a marker. I'm going to mark where the quill is. And the quill is this piece that runs through the middle of it. This is the quill right here. The quill part of the feather. This doesn't want to lay flat. Quill of the feather right there. And so you can see it runs all the way to the tip of the feather, but not that way on every feather. Some of them have barbs that come off the ends as well. But we're going to draw in the quill, and then we're going to separate the feather from the quill at the bottom. So I'm just going to do that, and I've got a little mark here for my centerpiece, and hopefully I remember to stay that. But I'm just going to stay there. I'm just going to come around here at the bottom, and then from there I'm just going to draw a simple line that runs up the middle of the feather. Simple as that. These are some cutouts I did on the bandsaw that we can show that not every feather has all these quills attached completely. They have little barbs on the end of them right here, and I know I can't zoom in close enough to see that, but these little barbs connect the feather of these little veins together. And you'll see birds preening themselves, and what they're doing is they're working to try to get those barbs back together, because when they do that, it sheds water better and protects them a little more. And so they preen to where those barbs come back together. And on an old feather like this, and I probably won't be able to get them all back together, but we're going to give the approximation on this one right here. So I'm going to grab a big knife, just a simple big knife, and we're going to start whacking on this thing and get it down to shape. So I'm using in this particular case, I have 2 big knives. I actually have 4 or 5 of them, but I only have 2 in my tool bag because these are my 2 favorite ones. This one is made by Helvey, and I really love it, and I probably ought to buy another few Helveys, but they're really hard to get because you have to wait a long time. This one from Pinewood Forge I really like as well. It's great for curving, for doing cuts where you have to turn because the back is rounded. This back has been rounded over. Most of the other knives are, but this one is thicker and it handles that. Anyway, pick out where you want to go. We have to make a decision somewhere along the way whether we want it to be flat like these are so they can be mounted on a piece of habitat or a piece of background, or whether we want to hollow it out on the back so that you can make an ornament out of it or hang it. I've seen people make real small ones of these and use them as earrings. So this is basswood, and so it's very lightweight. It's not going to weigh a lot. So this weighs, I would say this weighs less than an ounce. When we take out the wood on the back, it allows it to lay there, but I've got a an example that I lay out when I'm teaching a class, and it has the 6 steps of this feather from here to here. When I went to mount them on a board, I mounted them on a board like this. When I went to do that, if I had taken the back out, there's nothing for the screw or the glue to hang on to, so it's way out here and it gets knocked off easily. So on this one, what we're going to do is we're just going to do it flat so that we can do whatever we want to with the feather. So I'm going to take a big knife, and I'm just going to start. What I want to do is round it because this thing is going to be rounded like this. You can see how we've got a round shape to it. And that's what we want to do with this. And sometimes there's just no alternative but to get in here and hog it out. So what I want to do is carve over to here and then carve over to here so that this quill is the mounded part. And then we'll fiddle with that bottom when we get to it. So you probably don't want to watch me stand here and do this, but I won't shut the camera off. We'll just carve and talk. How's that? So essentially what I want to do is go from this line down to this line, and I'm going to leave it a little bit thicker here. So otherwise this will get real thin and you drop it and break it. So I'm just going to shape it. Remember to stay in my spot right there. Of course it gets lost in the chips, but that's my spot right there. Let me color that red so I know what that is. Instead of a chip, I might want to blow it off the table. There's my mark. There's where I want to stay, right in the middle. Okay. So whatever wood removal tool you use, you could use. I mean, for those of you that are power carving, this would be a great one to just come down here and just paint all the way down, or sorry, not paint. We're not to the painting stage yet, but carve all the way down to the side. And you can make this as thin and as thick as you want. This is I'll give you the dimensions. I apologize that I didn't do that earlier. This is wood that is, get my fingers to work this morning, about 3/4 of an inch for my Canadian brothers and sisters and the others who use the metric system. This is about 2 centimeters roughly. It could be a little thinner, it could be a little thicker. And then I have it about 13 centimeters long, which translates into about 5 inches. So you can make these any size that you want. Again, like I said, I have a friend that does, or I've seen them, where they carve them small enough and light enough to where they would be earrings. And so, I imagine they could be charms on a necklace. You have all kinds of different bird feathers. Again, you've got hundreds of different birds on this earth, and you could, there may be even thousands of types of birds. I'm a science teacher, but I teach the physical science, natural science, or rather than life science. So I don't know how many birds there are, but you could do from this just about any type of bird that you wanted. If you're willing to make it in a miniature scale. Obviously, if you're going to do an eagle feather or a hawk feather or some other large bird, that thing may be inches long, several inches long. This is great for miniaturizing it. So if you wanted to get it to the point where the shape is the shape of that bird feather, but it's not the same size, then you're just You're going to have to size it down, whatever mechanism you do that. If you find a picture, you can go to Kinko's or on your computer if you have the ability to go down in percentage-wise in terms of the size of it. A lot of times when I do full-size figures, I do a lot of cowboys, Santas, gnomes, things like that. When I do that, what I will end up doing is finding the pattern I want and drawing it out. And then I will take it down. My printer doesn't have a way of making that smaller. So I don't have a resizing button on my printer over there. So I just simply go down to Kinko's whenever I'm down there again, FedEx Kinko's, and I will just resize that up. I'm separating the bottom of the feather and the end of the quill where we're going to have the felt and string down there. And so I could go with that. I mean, I certainly want to make it smaller. And if you're a power carver, you just want to sand that down. It wouldn't take you more than a few minutes down to get to the size. But make sure if you're going to do that, if you've done sanding on your wood at all, and then you're going to come back with a knife, just make sure that somehow along the way you've removed all those sanding particles. Because if you don't, the stuff that comes off and gets embedded in the wood will give your knife blade all kinds of scratches. Not really something you want to do if you plan on keeping your knives for a long time. I have a friend of mine that when he first started carving, he didn't really know how to sharpen the knives right because these are different than your average pocket knife. They have a different bevel, they have a different back, all these, whatever these words are for the pieces of the knife. He didn't know how to sharpen, so he ended up throwing them away and buying new ones all the time. Well, you can see when knives are $5, that's one thing. When knives are $20, $30, $40, that's another. And so I couldn't afford that. I'm a retired school teacher, and teachers don't make a lot of money to start with, and when you retire, it's even less. So I can't afford to throw away tools. I do everything I can to salvage them. I just had a lady whose grandfather had been in the carving club for a long time, the carving club that I belong to, and he passed away a few years back, and they had passed around his tools among the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and everybody said, yeah, I'll do that, and then come to find out after several years no one really was going to do that. So she gave me a bunch of them, and I was able to rework a few of them. This gentleman had taken a bunch of made a bunch of knives out of things like screwdrivers and drill bits and you name it, and kitchen knives, and repurposed the handle. And I was able to sharpen a few, hone a few, grind a few, and get some of them down to a decent approximation of a blade. I'm going to be teaching at our University of Scouting in sometime in January. And one of the things I was asked if I would teach a bolo class. And so those of you that follow me on YouTube, you know that I have the bolo class that I have, the bolo videos, is Uncle Sam. And so those knives, understanding that most people come into something like that probably don't have professional knives like these, a Helvey, a Flex Cut, a Drake, whatever. And so they may have a pocket knife. Well, I've been able to repurpose those tools down to something that can be used for somebody who wants to learn how to carve a bolo tie. And that's exactly what we're going to do. All right. I'm down to a point where I could certainly piddle, play, and putter and get this thing smoother and thinner and whatever, but I'm going to leave the back flat. I may trim some of these saw marks off. For those of you that plan on entering sometime in the next year, 2023 is coming up here real soon. As a judge, I've judged a few shows. One of the things I want to impress upon you is the fact that any carving, regardless of what kind of carving you have, any carving, a bird, feather, a dog, a cowboy, whatever, when you go to enter your stuff into a show, make sure you've removed these saw marks. And I don't know that my camera will get close enough to see those saw marks right there. Anytime you have saw marks on your wood, it indicates that you're not finished. And if you're not finished, why are you entering it into a show? That's what a judge is going to look at. And so if you see any of these saw marks on a carving, that should be taken off if you plan on entering. Now, a lot of people don't enter shows because they find no reason to. It's one of those things where, why would I do something I enjoy and have somebody criticize it? Very good point. I agree with you 100%. But for those that want to get their work out of there, especially for those of you that want to enter a show for the publicity so that you can further your business or your hobby or whatever, that's one of the things you're going to want to look at, especially if you're going into a show just to demonstrate, just to show what the art of the local area is or your art is. That's a whole different story than someone who's going in to make a name for themselves and advance their business. And I've done that too. I haven't entered in a couple of years because I've been the judge at our show for a couple of years, and it's not right for me to enter the show when I'm judging the show. So some people think no big deal, if you have integrity, you can do that. But I don't want any questions to be entered about, well, why is he the judge and how could he be allowed to enter? And guess what? His stuff won a ribbon or two. Well, if I'm judging a show, I'm not going to enter the show. It's just out of fairness, so that there's no impropriety there. Anyway, I'm where I want to be for this video here. We're about 16 minutes in, and I didn't want this to be a 3-hour video. So anyway, we're here where we need to be. I'm used to drawing with a pencil, but my wife has gotten on to me enough times where I'm learning to draw with a marker. So I've got these little Sharpie permanent markers. These are the ultra fine points. And they're great, but they used to make an extra fine point, and I can't find them because they had a harder tip. This one, if you get too aggressive with it, it has a tendency to crush. So I'm gonna draw from the point, and what I want is for it to get smaller, or it's smaller at the top and it gets larger at the bottom. So as we start out up here at the top, we're real thin, and we're slowly going to just make it wider till we get down to the bottom, and then the rest of this would be hidden underneath this. So just to show you what I'm looking at down here, what we're going to do on this bottom piece, we're just going to take that piece off and that piece off, and eventually this will be a little bit higher than the feather itself. And so we'll take that down a little bit later, but I just want you to see where we're going when we're doing with that. So I know this is going to be where it's right in the middle. So I'm going to carve that down to that quill, redraw my line back in, and then I'm going to take a V-tool, and I'm just going to outline that, because what I want to do next step is to V-tool this line here on both sides, and then I'm going to bring the feather down to that size. And whether you go up or down, it really doesn't matter. But all I'm doing is I'm going to take off with my V-tool that line. The line that I drew, I want to take it off. I think I'm doing a pretty good job at staying on my point. Now, my friend Doug, the bird carver, and others that I know that do bird carving, and then they do feathers, one of the things that they do when it comes time to put in all the barbs and all the veins is they'll use a power tool and some kind of stone to do that. I personally don't. I just do it with a V-tool, a smaller V-tool than the one I got. This one, I think this one is a 1/8. I know there's some people that really want to know what all we're doing. So that's a quarter. This is 1/8 wide, and it looks like it's about gosh, I don't know, 45 angle. I can't really tell. Remember, I was a science teacher, not a math teacher. It's not true. I was actually a math teacher for a while too. Anyway, so this, when I go to add all the veins in, and I'm sure you don't want to sit there and watch me do that, so I may break up the video doing that after I've done that for a while. But I want to take off all these lines, and sorry, I'm pulling it up to my chest, which is where I normally carve. So I'm just gonna lay this V-tool down so I'm getting all those lines off, because I don't want them on there when I go to carve and when I go to paint. Not carve, I am carving. Anyway, it's nearly Christmas of 2022, and I hope that everybody's had a great year. I have retired this year from teaching public school, and I've been lucky enough to pick up classes in Boise and the surrounding area to teach wood carving. I'm having a good time with that. I do, upwards of 5 or 6 classes a month, and then I've got my Etsy and YouTube stuff loaded up, or not YouTube, Etsy and eBay, and then I'm doing the YouTube channel, and I'm staying pretty busy, and I like it that way. I don't want to have a lot of free time in my retirement where I'm just sitting around watching something as worthless to me as a talk show. So anyway, all right, so we got that. I'm going to come down and I'm going to take my knife, and I just want to follow that groove, and I don't have to go very deep, but I'm probably going 1/8 of an inch deep, maybe as much as 3/16. I don't know. I'm not going to measure it, but it gives you an idea of what we're doing. So shadows making it hard for me to see. I'm staying in that groove, and I'm just going to make that stop cut. I'm going to come back now. I can do this with a knife. If you do this with a knife, be careful where the tip of your blade is. You want the tip of your blade to go as far as the cut is, but not any farther. If you bring it over to here, you've got a lot of cleanup to do. One of the easiest ways to not do that is to do it with a fishtail gouge. I think this is the oldest tool I have. I bought it in Drake when they did a show here in early, I don't know, we don't even have that show anymore, but I bought that one, and I like this. And then I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to take out a little bit of that so that I'm raising the quill up. You see how that's raising that up and giving me that quill standing out. And I already did the other side, so we'll go in and do that other side as well. And it's your choice on how far up you're going to do, how far above the surface you want that quill to be. I don't want mine to stick way out, although on a feather it kind of does. It's raised above that. White might be masking it out, but it is raised up there. So you want enough of it so that you can see it. Doesn't have to be really prominent, but it has to be enough so that you can see it. So I'm just going to go back here and trim off some of these places where I didn't get as deep as I really want. If I was to do that with a knife, I'll do it on this side, it's easier. What I want to do is keep my blade from going over into this side. I just want to keep that, and you got to kind of know, that old saying, know where the tip of your knife is. In this one, you kind of got to do that. You kind of have to feel. So I've got enough of that. I'll go back and I'll turn it around and I'll stop cut it out. And I can see that. I'm not sure you can. I can see that I've undercut it, but I haven't cut into that quill. So I've been able to keep my knife blade from undercutting it to the point where I would have to cut out even more. So I'll just follow this along, staying in that same spot, not same spot, the same depth of where I want my quill to stand out. Now I did that way because the grain runs this way, and because the wood is running uphill. If I tried to do it on this side, I might be able to get away with it, but it might split too much on me, and we'll see. Maybe we'll get it out of there. Keeping an idea of where my tip of my knife is. And then I'm going to come back here, and that wood that I cut out, again, stop cut, comes out. I'm practicing to use my half a thumb that I have. Those of you that have followed along know that I have Had a table saw accident many years ago, and I lost part of the middle finger and part of the thumb. So I don't have that thumb to be able to push very well with. So I use it more as a fulcrum than I do as a pushing tool. So now I'm going to take those cuts that I made and kind of trim them out. I don't want a lot of indentations and a lot of depth, but I just want to smooth all of that out so that I get rid of the crack marks. You see where I was carving, I created a crack there. So I got to clean that up. And sometimes, depending on which way you need to go, you can't clean it up. So let's try going the other way. And look at there, cleans up. Cleans up pretty good. Yep, pretty good. Channeling one of Jeff Dunham's puppet characters. I can't remember the guy's name, the goofy one. Yep, pretty good, pretty good. I'm sure I'm not doing it as well as Jeff Dunham does. All right. From there, what we want to do, I want to take on my even smaller V-tool. That's not the one I'm looking for. Where is the one I'm looking for? Right there. So this one's even smaller. I don't know if this one's even a 16th. Where's my thing here? It ain't very big at all. It's a, yeah, it's 1 to 4, 8. It's a 16th. And this is a Ramelson. And I've had this thing for a long time, and I really, really, really like it. But it's getting to the point where it's getting harder and harder to sharpen and keep sharp. All right. We go to do these veins. What I want is I want to follow. See how they come down and curve in? They don't go just straight off. They come in and they curve to the outside. See that? I want to follow that. And so this is going to come in like this. And every subsequent line is going to be like that. Hope you probably can't see that with my pencil. So we'll do it with a marker. Yes, yes, wife. So we'll come in like that, and you make as many or as few as you want. How detailed do you want to do? So there's a lot of different ways. One of the ways I told you earlier was the power carvers will take a small stone, and they just sit here and they've got a little tiny micro carver, and they make those things. I don't know about you, but I don't have that patience. This is not a whole lot better because you're going to come in here with your little tool. A guy online named Lynn Dowdy, he's got a website called Out West Wood Carving. You can look up his gallery, and he's got tons of videos. But he shows you how he does this. He makes them real thin, and then he puts some kind of modeling paste, and you can use just about any one that you want. But a modeling paste on top of that. Then he comes in with a toothpick, and he makes these, when it starts to set up and starts to get hard, he makes these fletchings with a toothpick. And I'll be honest with you, you can't tell the difference. And so I'm not going to do it that way. Feel free to go look at Lynn's stuff. I'm not going to repeat what he does. He does a great job at it. And for those of you that know him, he does a lot of Western carvings. And so it is just wonderful how he does that. But whether you want to do power carving, or you want to do hand carving, or you want to do the modeling paste, I'm losing my words here, whichever way you want to do it, it's entirely up to you. I'm going to show you how I do mine. I do my line, and I come in here with this little V-tool, and I have another one, and so when this one gets dull, I'll reach and grab that other one rather than stopping. But I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to take off that line. Now, I could certainly put more in between. I could certainly, let's see if I can get another one in between and keep it straight. The problem with doing this by hand is the more you add, the more it is hard to keep them parallel. Especially when you get up here. It gets worse and worse. But anyway, I'll show you how to do it. I'm certain you've got better things to do with your day than to sit here and watch me carve fletchings. It's almost as bad as watching corn grow. I don't know that I want to have, I know I don't have that kind of patience. So whether you measure these out by hand or you just kind of eyeball them, one of the things you got to remember, this is your carving. This is not somebody else's carving. This is yours. And if you're going to give it away to somebody, I can guarantee you they're going to love it. I have never given a carving away and somebody said, no, you keep it. I have, every time I've offered a carving to someone, whether it was paying or whether it was a gift or a Christmas ornament or whatever, people really like handmade stuff. And I'm glad, it's one of the good things that's come out of this whole time of having to stay at home, is that a lot of people have turned back to the attitude of making stuff. I was lucky, my wife and I were lucky enough several years ago I think it was 8 years ago, we got a chance to go to John C. Campbell Folk School. If you've never been to a folk school, or you've never been to John C. Campbell one, go. Go if you can afford to, because we are a nation of people that are independent enough we want to make our own stuff. And the John C. Campbell School was a great opportunity to go and learn another skill, or learn better the skill you already have, whether it's paper making or blacksmithing or whatever. The John C. Campbell School in North Carolina is a fantastic place. Aside from the training you get, you're also going and hanging out with a lot of people from all over the country. Anyway, the reason I say that is because the guy that used to run his name's Jan, and that's what he said. You find a video with Jan from John C. Campbell. He says, we're a community of people that make things. That's exactly what he says. We make things. And I can tell you there's nothing wrong with making things. I've made a lot of things myself, and I love making carvings. Anyway, I'm not going to sit here and do this the whole time. And maybe I've got enough wisdom to last that time, but in reality, I think you got better things to do with your time than watch me make fletchings. Nature's done it in a wonderful way, and I'm doing it in my way, and you go do that. So I'm going to jump from here, and I'm going to jump down to the quill down here. I want to make it to where it's not quite so thick from here to here. So I'm going to thin it down quite a bit, because it's that feather going down into it. That feather quill going down into it. So I'm going to make a stop cut there, and another stop cut there, and another stop cut here. And then I'm going to draw on it. And here's where you're going to run into issues probably with your fletchings coming down here on the quill. Sorry, I think I was a little bit off the screen, but all I'm doing is trimming this up and getting this ready. Come on. Getting this ready for me to do the quill. So I want to give it a rounded feature before I start, because I'm going to take a little bit more wood off, make it a little more round. Plus I'm in a hurry, it's almost lunchtime, and I am hungry today. Just got back from the gym, and I'm hungry. So, anyway, let me thin that down just a little bit more. I don't want it quite as wide, and I don't want it quite as thick. Okay, close enough. I want to take my marker, and I'm going to draw 1, 2 lines. I could draw more, but really I get down here, and pretty soon you get to where you're on the edge of the wood, and it has a tendency to want to break off on you. I'm going to take my V tool, the bigger one, the 1/8. I had to stop and think about that for a minute. And I'm just going to take off those lines. This is going to establish where the thread is, because around that feather they'll have wrapped a piece of felt and then tied it with some kind of thread. And I guess if you were doing it authentically, you would use sinew or something like that. But I've known a few people that were involved in powwows and the Order of the Arrow and the Boy Scouts, for those of you that know what that is, where they make their own regalia, and I enjoy watching the things that they've done. I've sat in on a couple of sessions where I helped make a couple blanket capotes and then made a couple more of my own, and that's really a little bit of fun. All right, so now what I'm going to do is hang on to my wood, and I'm just going to make a stop cut in those grooves. Well, those 34 minutes went by real quick. I thought it'd take us about 30 minutes to get this thing done, but we're not even close. All right, so I got my stop cuts. I'm going to come down at about a 45-degree angle, and I'm just giving that an indentation. Doesn't need much, but it needs a little bit. Because what I want to do is make it look like it's thread that's tied in that felt and making it kind of wrap around the thread when you add a little bit of tightness to it. And around the bottom of it also, it doesn't look like a sharp indentation there. Sharp edge, rather. And essentially what we have is a carved feather. Now painting is relatively easy on this. Whether you're going to do a blue jay or a mallard, I think that one Doug wrote on the back. It depends on how you want to paint it. If we're ignoring these, and these are ones that have a lot of sheen and a lot of glistening to them, because that's what the mallard feathers do. This one doesn't have a lot of that, but it's got a little bit, and then the under painting of the dark spots. For this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this red. And do the lines. So I'm going to paint the felt red. Choose whatever color you want, green, yellow, brown, whatever. I want to paint the felt red. I'm going to do I've alternated it here, but I really didn't like that. So what I would do is come back in with a really, really thin paintbrush, one of the script liner brushes. They're real thin and long. So what I would do is come back in here and just in that groove right there, deep in that groove, just a little bit more, I'd make that black. The quill doesn't have a lot of color to it, as you can see. It takes on the color of the fletching around it. And so then I would undercoat it white and give it you don't want it stark white. You want to give it a little bit of in-depthness to it. I know that's not a word, but little bit to make it look like it's not all just one solid color. And then if you're going to do like a turkey feather approximated to look like an eagle feather, then you blacken the top of that. And so feel free to be as creative as you want on this. I'd love to see some of what you do. I would come back here and just take my fishtail gouge and just flatten that out, or with a knife. It's up to you. But depending on what you're going to do with it, you just want to shave off those saw marks. It's not only for shows and competitions, but it's also for how the paint takes. And so we're painting on bare wood, depending on what you're doing. Sometimes you might be able to seal it. Some people seal their wood with all kinds of sealers and then paint over top of that, and that would help. But when you have these saw marks, the way that blade has chewed up the wood and made it frayed a little bit, it's going to take wood and paint. The wood is going to take paint a little bit different than what you want. So you want to make sure that it has a clear surface to soak in wood, because a surface that's beat up is a little more apt to soak in a lot more paint, which makes it darker. So hope you've enjoyed this video. Reach out to me if there's something else you want me to do. I'm going to do several beginner videos and kind of alternate between beginner and intermediate, maybe even an advanced one thrown in there. But I hope you stay subscribed here, watch the videos, and I look forward to hearing from you with any comments you want or suggestions you have. Appreciate you coming along and helping me paint a Native American feather. I'll see you next time.